everyone and welcome to my channel. This is Leslie and I am making a layout for the JustNick Design Team today. The cut file I will be using is called Rose Cluster and there it is. I transformed the cut file into a stitch file and there you see what it looks like. Just excuse the quality of the photo. Those are the little holes that appeared in the end that my silhouette made. And here I thought I'd have to just reinforce the holes a little bit, stick my pointy hole maker thingy through each hole, but I didn't have to. All the little inside bits of the holes just rubbed off. I am going to be stitching this cut file that is now a stitch file, I suppose, with some plain white embroidery thread. I'm going to be using all 6 strands instead of 3 that I usually use. 3-strand stitching is a bit easier than 6-strand. However, 6-strand stitching gives the layout a lot of texture and also some dimension and interest. This took me a while to do, so I'm not going to show you everything. I did chain stitch this entire cut file. And there you see just some progress of me doing the cut file there. Excuse me. And yes, as I said, this took me a while. So here is the finished product. I didn't stitch where I knew my photo would be, so that's just a little bit I didn't have to stitch. So and I'm going to show you just a close-up there of all the dimension and the texture that stitching a cut file gives. What I did with the cut file in the end, I also enlarged it on my in my silhouette and I flipped it horizontally. I knew that I wanted the photos on the left hand side of my page, as in the photos my husband and I are looking to off the right hand side of the page, so I wanted it to look like we are looking at the floral or the rose cluster. So I wanted that cluster on the right hand side of the page, so I flipped it horizontally. Excuse me. I am going to be using the Willow Lane collection from Crate Paper, the new Maggie Holmes collection. I don't think it's very new, but it's certainly new in my stash. I am fussy cutting that piece of vellum. I wanted the rose gold there. Rose gold, rose, golden rose. On just tucked there in underneath my photo, and as you can see that the golden rose sort of mimics the rose that I stitched on the background, and that's exactly what I was going for. I'm going to be layering some of the 6x8 pattern paper behind my photo, and this specific 6x8 pattern paper it's sort of like a dictionary, but it has the words and the definitions of words like home, camera, memory, things like that. So you're not going to see any of it in the end, but I know it's there, and that's all that matters. So I really wanted to do some, I wanted a big mat at the back of my 2 photos. I wanted them also to be matted on the same piece of paper. I didn't want them each to be matted on a different piece of paper. I'm not sure where I went here. Oh, I am just going through my embellishment pack to see what I want to use to embellish this beautiful thing I was busy making, and I am going to be sticking those little banners or flags, the one on the bottom left hand side of my bottom photo, and one on the top right hand side of my top photo. The one on the bottom, let me just have a look. It says my darling, and the little flag banner type thing at the top says wonderful you. And those are the only ones of the thicker embellishments that I'm going to be using. After I stitched that cut file onto the background, it was really easy for me to put the whole layout together, because it's such a big area that it covered. Most of the interest that I wanted to create on the page was already there, and so it really came together pretty quickly after this. I really wanted to use some of those rub-ons, but obviously, you know, they are white. So unless I rub them onto the gold flower, that you wouldn't be able to see them quite nicely. I also wanted to use some of those ephemera pieces, and I do take the ephemera out and I sort of fiddle around with them, but I don't use any of the ephemera in the end. What I do use, however, is that pattern paper with the beautiful flowers on them. And I do fussy cut out a couple of those flowers just to place on top of the golden flower, just to break that gold. That gold was a little bit zhuzh, a little bit stark for me. So just to give it some extra, to bring in also more color, because at this stage it was white, gold, obviously black and white from my photo, and then the matte is a very sort of, the matting of my photo was very neutral. So I needed to bring in some more color, and this floral sheet that I fussy cut from was the perfect addition to the layout to bring in some color. Now, this is some of my tissue paper, and I've been using it a lot lately. In fact, this morning I made a layout and I finished it. There's no more beautiful tissue paper left. So by this stage I still had some of it left, but now I don't. So I'm going to have a little memorial service for my tissue paper later on when I want to use it, and it's finished and it's done and it's gone. So that just adds a bit more interest to the back of my photo. It also just draws your eye a bit more to the left hand side of the layout. I like the fact that the edges are frayed and wispy and that they have that torn effect. It gives it a very delicate look, and you know, along with the delicate nature of the florals that I've got on the page, it really tied in very nicely. That vellum, the tissue paper with the flowers, it all tied in really, really nicely. So I do use my ATG gun just to stick everything down onto the paper. I don't use any other glue to stick down the vellum, the golden flower vellum type thing, because I didn't want, it's vellum, so you'll probably see the glue through it, and also it was on top of such a textured background. That stitching was very thick, and I knew I would have to add quite a lot of adhesive to stick down the vellum, but I really thought that it wasn't necessary to stick all that flower down. It was really nicely attached to the photo mat, and the photo mat was obviously, you know, you saw how I attached it with my ATG. I am going to be using some of the clear stickers in this collection, and I love the fact that they brought in clear stickers. I love the pop of black it gives, and also it's clear stickers, so whatever you stick it on, you will, you know, see it through the sticker. If you hear a little girl in the background, that is Emma. She is playing in her room, and I did tell her that I'm doing a voiceover and she must be quiet, but she is obviously very, very into what she's playing at the moment, so you're going to hear a little bit of a little girl playing in the background there. So I wanted more black on this layout. I wanted to bring in more black from the photo just to balance it out a little bit. So I bring in my Heidi Swap black color shine, and I just add some splatters to the top left and bottom right hand corner of my layout, just to give that diagonal effect, and also just the balancing. You know, if I added black splatters at the top, I'd have to balance it somewhere in the layout, and the easiest for me to think of where to balance it was obviously bottom right hand corner. So I do bring in some of my liquid glue just to adhere the tissue paper a bit more sturdily to the photo mat that I had going there. I didn't want those photos falling off or getting saggy on the tissue paper. Now, I usually do doodly borders around my layouts, but with this one I decided to bring in my brush ink pen, and I did a brushed border around the layout. Now this did take a while because my ink is running out, so I had to go over and over and over and over it, and that just brings the layout together for me. That adds more black, and it sort of just keeps everything together. And so obviously to bring in some more of the doodly aspect and some more well, how do I say this? A square aspect to the layout. I doodled around the edges of my photo, and that just framed it nicely. My tissue paper was, you know, running off the page and doing its own thing. So I decided, instead of tearing it off, I'm going to scrunch it up and just staple it down with my tiny attacher. And that also added more texture. It added a little bit of dimension, and it just adds interest. So just a little bit of interest. That die cut is from Flourish, I think. And I just, when I opened my Flourish drawer, I wanted to find something more I can put on there. And that was right on top of the drawer. And I thought, that is gorgeous. And I stuck it down with a lot of liquid glue. You saw how much I put at the back there because of the amount of dimension that the stitching gave behind or on the background. So I wanted to put in the dates of these photos. The top photo was taken in 2007. It's the day we got married. And the bottom photo was taken at the beginning of November 2018. So I wanted to bring the dates in somehow, and because the top right hand and bottom right hand corner of the layouts are sort of, they are open, I thought I could bring in the dates there. So I do some more fussy cutting with that floral pattern paper from the 12 by 12 paper pad, and I stick down the flowers, but I pop up the leaves on some little foam squares just to give it an extra pop, because I wanted your eye to be drawn to the right hand side corners of the layout. So the flower is stuck flat with some wet glue, and then the little sprigs and the leaves are popped up on foam squares. And I love doing that with floral clusters if I do some fussy cutting. So I'm going to be fussy cutting another one of those little flowers out from the pattern paper sheet and just sticking it down at the bottom right hand side of my layout as well. The top flower is obviously pinkish. The bottom flower will be yellow, just to bring in some more yellow and also some contrast. So I'm using my thickers from Pink Paisley. You have I think these are from the Auburn Lane collection. I could be wrong, but I think they're from Auburn Lane. And you have the gold ones and you have the rose gold, and I used the gold ones. However, there weren't enough number of thickers to write out 2007 and 2018. So what I did was I just put a dash and then 07 and a dash and then 18, but there weren't any dashes, so I needed to create the dashes. I knew I would not use the hashtags. I'm not a hashtaggy layouty person. I don't use hashtags on layouts. Well, I haven't yet, but I knew I wouldn't in any case. I was just using one of the hashtags, and I just cut off two of its little arms, and I created little dashes for the 07 and 18. So you'll see that I'm bringing in my T ruler there, just so that I could make sure that the 30 April 07 and then 4 November 2018 was straight. I am not always, the things I do aren't always perfectly straight. You can see I angle my page when I work on it, and that also doesn't help with filming because my pages are always angled. I don't know why my pages are always angled. It's also when I write, I angle my page. So I have to usually use a T ruler just to make sure that everything is straight on the layout. That is it for this layout. Head on over to the JustNick blog and see what they have. Bye.